time is a very interesting concept, and it's a subject that a lot of people tend to think they don't have much or enough of. And it's one of those things where whether you are worth a penny or $1 billion, you'll always think that you don't have enough time or feel like you never have enough time. Again, whether you have every hour of the day free or whether you have every single waking second of the day packed with something on your schedule or in your calendar, whether that's work related, personal, whatever it might be. And I think it's really interesting because something I've been thinking a lot about recently in recent months is that there's a lot of things that seem, at least to me on the surface, logically speaking, paradoxical in nature. Things that, when you look at them, they're actually the opposite to what you expected them to be. And that's just how it works. And, I mean, kind of ever since we're old enough to comprehend what time even is, that's one of the first things. It's like the old saying, time goes fast when you're having fun, or that you never seem to have enough time in the day. And yet somehow people make enough time for certain things, or we always manage to find a way to not have enough time, whatever we might say as an excuse or a reason for time. And the quick story I wanted to share today is how I've had a lot of free time, especially over the past year. I've had busy moments, but I've not had busy days necessarily. There's been the odd day I've, technically had priorities and had things that, every day there is a certain priority, whether I've chosen it or not. I think every day you should choose your priorities anyway. But there's been certain days that have been on calendar busier than others. And I think it's been trying to choose to be more productive in my days out of a sense of purpose and just general fulfillment to try and get more done and make progress in life. But again, one of those things that was paradoxical to me or didn't make sense was that I have so much time, yet I feel like I don't have any time. And it was one of those almost delusional states of mind where I was I've mentioned it before in this channel, maybe I'll link the video, productive procrastination, where, especially being in the self-help space, you watch a lot of content, self-help content, and you feel like you're being productive because you're engaging, especially a lot of the content you'll watch is infotainment, edutainment, where it's entertaining and educational at the same time, but it's normally the same stuff you've heard, so you feel like you're an expert at it, even though it's just kind of common knowledge within that subject. And to me, one of the biggest things was being in this productive procrastination cycle. And whether you spent 2 hours a day watching content or 10 hours a day watching content, you felt like you were being productive because you were getting some information that you either knew, so you felt good that you knew, or new information that gave you a good dopamine hit, made you feel, give you the reward feeling for 10-20 minutes because it was short-term knowledge, and you never chose to write it down because your pride would say, oh, that's, I know this, I'm going to keep this forever. And then half the stuff, 99% of it even, you forget forever. Which is why, certainly now with new information, I force myself to take notes of it, so I remember it for good. And the kind of story I wanted to say now is a kind of story over the past few months, really. In fact, even over the past, I would say 6 to 12 months, really, but it exponentially changed, I would say, in the past 6 months, ever since, towards the end of 2023. And it's been mix and match still, but the big thing that happened was that I had these procrastination cycles in a way, but when I had the most productive times, it was actually when I spent less time on the thing than I thought I would need to. And what I mean by this is it's simply that you assume you need to spend a certain amount of time doing something, and in reality you don't need to spend that much time on it to be as efficient as you think you need to do it. And this is kind of what Parkinson's Law is. If you're into mental models or trying to understand, I go stupidly interested in psychology and mental models and things, but Parkinson's Law is basically that work expands to fill the time you give it, to fill the time allotted. So if you give a team of people 2 weeks to fill a quota or to hit a target, they'll take 2 weeks. If you give them 2 days, they'll take 2 days. But obviously, to kind of balance the equation there, you have to take into account the fact that give someone a realistic amount of time to actually pull something off. If you have to send 1,000 emails, you're probably not gonna do that in one day. You might be able to do it in a week, almost definitely 2 weeks. But if you give someone 6 months to send 1,000 emails, it'll take them 6 months. But if you give them 2 weeks, you'll be able to do it in 2 weeks just about. So this was the whole procrastination cycle I was facing over the past sort of 4 to 6 months, where I would be most productive when I spent less time focusing on something that I wanted to do. And actually, it led to a kind of psychological shift where you get more done by spending less time on certain things so that you finally get them done. And then once you start getting things done, you get the momentum to do more things. And this is kind of a bit like mixing a few different kind of mental models and habit tricks together in the personal development space and whatever. Because for me, like, again, if I've had hours of a day or hours in a week spare, like I do most weeks, have a lot of time to just spare because I'm choosing to not focus on much, I realized that I could focus on a small thing. If I wanted to do, like I'm doing right now, 50 cold calls a day, 6 days a week, because of the type of businesses I'm calling, and they're not like 9 to 5 offices, they're hospitality and leisure places, so they're open normally 7 days a week, but a lot of managers aren't really around to take an executive action sometimes on a Saturday, but normally on a Sunday, so I tend to call 6 days a week. And I noticed that I set myself the goal of, okay, I know I have enough time. Let's see how long it takes me, like, this was like 3 weeks ago now, to do 50 calls. Let me get 50 pickups. I want to talk to 50 people, not just 50 calls, 50 pickups. And so I started doing cold calling, 50 calls a day, every day. At the beginning, I knew that I'd done cold calling before, not to that volume every day, maybe like a sheet of like 10, then another 10, then another 5, and another 4. And I was also including like voicemails and note and pickup, and not picking up last time. So I did like 30 in one go over the course of like 2 hours, and it felt like a lot. I was kind of, nervous and like kind of hyping up too much and stressed out. And this time I was just like dial, 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 and I wasn't trying to rush through them as well, but I was just trying to efficiently get to the point with each one and use what I'd learnt through learning a bit about sales calls and cold calling to do it. And I realised that in the course of about 1 to 2 hours, I'd got through about 50 calls, at least 50 pickups. And over the last 3 weeks, I've really refined the feeling of the confidence in this and the ability to just keep going at it and all kind of automatically dialing almost. I don't have an automatic dialer set up, but I got to that point where now, over the course of the last 2-3 weeks, I'm almost doing it without feeling anything. In terms of, there's the first like 50 or 100 calls you ever make in cold calling, there's this apprehensive feeling of actually pressing the call button. Whereas now I just copy paste a number, and I don't really think anything of the dialing. And I have honestly got to the point now where I don't really overhype or over ramp up the next call and the next call and the next call. Obviously there's still that overwhelming thing of looking at my new day's worth of calls to make, but I don't over ramp up each new call, which is great because of my own nerves before and anxiety reasons before. And there's still a lack of focus element to it, just trying to stay on it for at least 5 minutes or so, get through that first few minutes and then keep going. But cold calling has been the first example for me of, I do 1 to 2 hour thing in the day. That's like my highest priority, because right now it is getting clients for my business is the highest priority. And then that gives me the momentum once I finish that to think that I've got so many more hours in my day free. And whether it's to research a cold calling thing, whether it's to set up my email thing, take some of the emails I've got from some of the cold calls, put them in my Apollo list for email marketing, which again I'm also doing like 20 minutes a day of right now. Just putting emails in the list, checking the enrichment cycle thingy's working. I'm not great at it, but I'm trying my best at it, using some of the emails I'm paying for in there. And generally, I noticed that, again, those 1 to 2 hours of cold calling, by not having any time by having so much time, in the day, I was just in that frame of mind where this is my highest priority thing. Don't act like you've got no time in the day because you have all the time in the world you could possibly need. And then you're finally in this position where, why not do this thing? Let's start making progress finally. Let's start just doing 1 to 2 hours a day. Let's do a minimum of this. Let's do a minimum of 50 pickups. There's no minimum calls, but it's a minimum of 50 pickups. And finally get going with that. And so now I've realized that, again, kind of taking into account Parkinson's Law, work expands to fill the time. I just do 50 calls, regardless of whether it takes me 1 hour, 50 minutes, or 3 hours. A lot of people need to call back later on because their manager's not around. But by doing this one task at the beginning of the day, I, one, fill my day up with 1 to 2 hours worth of high priority work. But then I've given myself enough ability by doing that task to get over that first mental hurdle, that first mental barrier of the day, to be able to basically reward myself with doing that task, and then I get the momentum to want to do the next task and the next task. And at the moment, I know it's still barely anything. It's still like 2-3 hours work a day, if that. But I don't want to overload these big tasks in my day by doing too many of them, because I know for a fact that the productive mind in me wants to do 3 to 4 sets of 2 hour long tasks, ultra time block my day. But I know I will lose focus if I do that. I know that I will not be as productive because I'll immediately go, that's overwhelming, lack focus, not do it. So now I'm purely disciplining myself to stick to these small high priority tasks, and then over time basically build up the habit of gaining momentum with doing these small tasks every day. And I know 2 hours isn't small, but it's better than 8 hours. But it's a lot. It's more productive than half an hour of calls, but it's a lot less productive than 8 hours. But I know I don't have the mental energy or capacity or focus to do 8 hours. So by doing that 1 to 2 hours at the beginning of the day, cold calling, that gives me the momentum to do the next thing, which, I also write down 3 goals every day to, 3 tasks to tick off my list every day. And some of them are small, some of them are slightly higher priority, slightly bigger. But I make tasks which are in that flow state, and there's a nice flow graph. Sorry to kind of ramble a bit, but there's a flow graph that I have looked up, and it's actually when you balance ability with challenge, it's this flow state, basically, when you're enjoying the moment, you're in passion, you're in flow with it. And this is that moment that we all speak of when time flies, when we feel like we're having fun. And that's what that moment is, when we are being challenged against our ability just enough. And it's like the corner of the chart where challenge meets ability, and it's perfect. And so after my cold calls, I finally get momentum and I start doing another 1 or 2 tasks in my day. And I realize that before I was maybe doing 1 hour or 45 minutes of actual kind of business, productive, making progress with business related tasks in my day. Not really doing any cold calls, kind of looking at my emails, kind of looking at this idea, kind of looking at that, asking ChatGPT for some answers. But now I do that 1 to 2 hours of calling. Doesn't feel like much time, but it also gets the ball rolling, gives me the momentum to do the other 1, 2, or 3 tasks in a day that aren't as big necessarily, but that adds up to 3 or 4 high priority tasks every day, and I get further than I would have otherwise if I didn't. So the whole point of this kind of mini story is that over the past few months, and especially the past few weeks, really taking this into account, I've realized that by focusing on that small thing that feels insignificant, it's kind of like the 5-minute rule but expanded, where when you have a lot of time, just focus on that one small thing, because then you will get the momentum to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, because you will get the reward. And it's basically expanding the 5-minute rule, which is basically, if you don't feel motivated to do the big thing, just do the first 5 minutes or just do the first 2 minutes. So that's what I've really been working on. Words twisted. And I just thought I'd share it with you, because if you've been lacking focus or procrastinating about certain things, I hope this helps you as well, because I've been lacking focus over the past few months, and at the beginning of the year I lacked focus, and I've really been getting into it over the past few weeks. And as of Monday the 13th of May, because today's the Sunday. It will be my 4th week of cold calling, and also probably my 4th or 5th week. Actually, no, close to the end of February. I finally started doing email outreach, and I've not had any success yet because of just spam rates and deliverability issues with new emails. So I'm focusing on that as well. But I feel like by doing these small bits, it gives you the momentum to get more progress. And right now in life, I feel like I'm at that thing where like each day, it's kind of that 1% better every day move where you focus on, okay, I'm not spending all day being hyper-productive because I'm not that type of person yet. But I'm building the habit, just like with journaling, just like with reading now. I'm in my 3rd or 4th day of reading a new book because I finished my last book. But I had two chapters left, and I had left it for months, and I'm finally finished it. Now I'm into the 3rd chapter of my 2nd book because I'm reading a chapter a night, and it's building momentum. And it's all these things I've learned that I'm finally putting into action. And now, out of all the habit lessons I've learned and habit building I've learned over the past year, it's now taken into account the idea of habit building on habits. And now I am making progress with each day by just adding little bits and finding that balance point so that I make progress each day, and I just add a little bit each day or each week or each month, so that in the end, that 1% better every day is like 37 times better by the end of the year. And that's what I'm aiming for. So hope this helps you, hope this motivates you maybe. Let me know your thoughts below on what I've said and everything. And sorry for the ramble, nearly been like 17 minutes, but thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. See ya.